Has anyone here heard of the Bhagavad Gita? You know what the Bhagavad Gita is? Not a lot of people. It is a most amazing book. If you're looking for a amazing spiritual, there's so many books now about spirituality, but this is actually the most astonishing and profound Vedic or yogic sacred text, where Bhagavan Shri Krishna is speaking on a battlefield to his friend and disciple, associate, Arjuna, the warrior, the prince. And it's a conversation on a battlefield. So of course death is one of the things which is discussed, amongst many, many other things. Meditation, yoga, the nature of the self, where happiness is to be found. All of these things are discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is one small part of a larger work called the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is the largest, if you want to call it a poem or a work ever given. It's like something like 10 times as large as the Odyssey and the Iliad put together. You've heard of the Odyssey and the Iliad. Many people study it at school. It's ancient Greek poems and things, epics and things like that. So this work, the Mahabharata, is 10 times as long as both of them combined. So it is an astonishing journey, which goes, actually it's a long story, I probably shouldn't get into it too much. But there were some unrighteous kings who had usurped the ruling of the world. This is like around about 5,000 years ago. And there were these righteous princes called the five Pandava brothers. And it was actually, the throne, so to speak, was rightfully theirs. But these other kings, princes, usurped the throne, and they were not ruling the world and the people in a good way. So although the Pandavas, these five brothers, who were great righteous warriors, tried to negotiate, the situation as diplomacy, and many, many negotiations took place. But Duryodhana, who was the head of the opposing side, the five Pandavas being what's known as Kshatriyas, who kind of protect the innocent and things like that. They said, look, all we need is 5 small villages. That's our nature, is to work in this way. So just give us 5 villages out of the whole of the kingdom. And Duryodhana said he could not spare enough land for the 5 Pandavas in which he could drive a pin. So you can see this guy is just not happening. He doesn't want to compromise or, in any way. So the battle became inevitable. And it's known as the Battle of Kurukshetra. And the Bhagavad Gita is where Sri Krishna spoke to Arjuna, this amazing spiritual wisdom in the middle of that. So this Mahabharata, there is these 5 brothers, Maharaj Yudhisthira, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadev. Again, I can't go into the whole details, we'll be here till midnight. But they were cheated in many, many different ways by Duryodhana and his crew. And through various crooked means, the 5 Pandavas were sent into exile in the forest for 12 years. So they couldn't even be around, they had to be in exile. And including the last year, the 13th year, is they had to be incognito. That if they were found by Duryodhana or anyone else, they would have to go and do another 12 years of exile. So it was this whole amazing thing in the Mahabharata. So anyway, what I wanted to read was a particular incident in this journey. If I recall, it is in the last year, just before the start of the 13th year, and these 5 Pandava princes were in a forest. And what had happened was, because they were righteous, these princes also looked after everyone in society, including the priest, or what is known as the Brahmins. And this one particular incident that I'm going to read that came about was, there was a poor priest, a poor Brahmin, who was about to perform what is known as a yajna, or a fire sacrifice, which is something which, the Brahmin people, priests, do for the benefit of others. It brings blessings to the community and to society and people. So this poor Brahmin priest was about to perform this yajna, or fire sacrifice, and a deer came along, and I don't know how it happened, but somehow or other these, what's called the Arani sticks. Arani sticks are the sacred wood in which the Brahmin priest will kindle this sacred fire. So the deer came in, and somehow or other, or on purpose, we don't know, these Arani sticks were caught in his antlers, and he just galloped off into the wilderness. So the priest who was about to do this fire sacrifice couldn't do the sacrifice because he didn't have these Arani, or sacred fire. So he came, nearby was these 5 Pandavas, they were camped nearby. So this priest came to the Pandava brothers and told them about the situation and requested, can you please find these Arani sticks so that I can perform this sacred ceremony. So 4 of the brothers went out in different directions. Maharaj Yudhisthira stayed back in the camp. So as these brothers went out, they searched everywhere for the deer, and for long hours. And actually, I think they went in different directions, if I recall. So one by one, without going through all the details, one of the brothers, Nakula, he never found the deer, and he became overwhelmed, parched with a thirst which was just overwhelming, and he had no water with him. So he climbed high in a banyan tree to look for where there may be water in the nearby, and he saw a lake. So he had walked to this lake, which was an amazingly crystal clear, beautiful lake. It had lotus flowers and beautiful fruit, and there were swans and all kind of waterfowl, beautiful. Bees were humming with the nectar of the flowers, and it was crystal clear water, so it was exactly what he was looking for. So as he went into the edge of the water and was about to drink, he heard a celestial voice out of the sky saying, you cannot drink this water. If you drink this water, you will die. But it was like a threat. So Nakula, being a great warrior, fearless person, and this thirst he had was so parched. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll get a drink later. He was so overwhelmed with this parched thirst, he had to drink. So when he put his lips to the water, he immediately dropped dead, just as his lips touched the water. So what happened was each one of the brothers also were overcome with this same thirst, and they all came to this same crystal clear lake. And even though they saw, each one came and they saw their brother there, this thirst was so overwhelming they had to quench the thirst first. And each time these 4 brothers, Sahadev, Arjuna and Bhima, came, and the same fate happened to each one of them. This celestial voice warned them against drinking from the water, but each one of them were impelled to because of the thirst, and each one died. So then after some time, Yudhisthira was, of course, wondering where his brothers were, and they had not come back with the Arani sticks, the sacred sticks. So he went looking for them, and he eventually came to this lake also, and he saw his 4 brothers lying there, dead. So he's checking them, and yes, there's no breath, anything. And he was looking around, and he saw there was no marks of a battle. His brothers were the most astounding warriors of their time. They were just renowned throughout the universe, let alone through this planet. He saw no signs of any struggle, no signs of any battle. There were no marks on their bodies. So he was astounded. How is it that my brothers can be killed? And that there was no struggle, no fight. And one thing he noticed was that although they were not breathing and there was no heartbeat or anything, he noticed that their features were still clear. In other words, for some reason then the living being, the soul, must still be in the body, although there's no sign of life. So he was very intelligent as well as a saintly prince. And he assumed that maybe something was going on with the water, although it was crystal clear. He thought there must be, perhaps Duryodhana had poisoned it. And this is what happened. They drank and they died of poison. So he was going to find out. So he walked into the lake. And as I recall, I think he took off his armor and everything and was going into the lake. And just as he was going into the lake, he also heard a celestial voice warning him, do not drink from this water. So he looked around and he was wondering where the voice came from. And there was a crane, a crane sitting on a branch of a tree on the side of the lake. And of course Yudhisthira is thinking, how is it that a crane could kill my 4 invincible brothers, you know. So he, you know, there's a whole dialogue goes on. He's asking the crane what happened, and then the crane transformed. What do they call it? What word do they use these days? Morphed or something. Transformed into this powerful, ferocious-looking being. And so now Yudhisthira began to understand something has taken place here. So this being, known as a Rakshasa, said that if you answer my questions, you will not die. If you drink of the water, you will die like your brothers. But if you answer these questions that I have, you will not die, and I will bring your brothers back to life. So he asked, if I recall, over 100 questions, this Rakshasa, to Yudhisthira. I'm not going to read them all, don't worry. So these are some of the questions that were put to Yudhisthira Maharaj, and there's one I want to get to particularly. So question, how does one become empowered? Yudhisthira, courage and patience empowers one. Tick. What is faster than the wind, and what grows more than the strands of wild grass in this world? So what is faster than the wind, and what is more numerous than the blades of grass in this world? These are pretty cool questions, and the answers are even cooler. Yudhisthira answers, the mind is faster than the wind. And that's, you can think, if you're sitting here, and if you've ever lived, say, in London or something like that, in less than a moment, you can be in London at the speed of the mind. So it says, the mind is faster than the wind. He said, our worries are more numerous than the strands of grass. True or not true? I'll leave that up to you. Question, what, when renounced, makes one liked by everyone in the world? What, when renounced, makes one liked by everyone in the world? What, when abandoned, leads to no regret? What, when renounced, makes one wealthy? What, when abandoned, makes one happy and peaceful? These are good questions. Yudhisthira, one who has renounced self-pride is liked by all. When anger is abandoned, one becomes unaffected by sorrow. Desire, when renounced, makes one wealthy. When greed is abandoned, one becomes happy and peaceful. Question, why are friends forsaken? Yudhisthira, friends are forsaken because of greed. What is poison? Lust is the real poison. What constitutes forgiveness? Forbearance of duality in the world is the greatest forgiveness. Which is the invincible enemy, and what constitutes an eternal disease? Yudhisthira, anger is the invincible enemy. Covetousness constitutes an eternal, incurable disease. What is grief? Ignorance is grief. What is the meaning of charity? Charity is the protection of all creatures. What is envy? Envy is nothing but grief of the heart. I think these are so cool, so succinct and so real. What does one gain by pleasant speech? Yudhisthira, one who speaks pleasant words is dear to everybody. Who is truly happy? One who is not burdened by debt is truly happy. He remains content and tranquil, even if he lives simply at home. What is heavier than the earth? What do you think? What is heavier than the earth? Yudhisthira, a mother's love is heavier than the earth. By what does one become wise? By serving others. What are the tidings of this world? The news. The world is like a cooking pot with the sun as its fire. Days and nights are its fuel, and months and seasons are its wooden spoon. All of us are being cooked by time. What is the most wonderful thing? That's what we all want to know. What is the most wonderful thing? Yudhisthira. Hundreds and thousands of living entities meet their death at every moment, but a foolish living being nevertheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. This is the most wonderful thing in this world. What makes the soul rise out of matter? Yudhisthira. It is the knowledge of the Supreme Soul which makes the soul rise. So the one this is connected to next week. Hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment, but a foolish living being nevertheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare for death. This is the most wonderful thing in the world. Is that cool or not? This is but a small part of the amazing yoga wisdom that we can avail ourselves to. So, without going too long, that is what we want to touch on next week. Just the idea that came along with, reading this and thinking about this, is it's actually very, very logical to think about death and to prepare for it. To give a very simple example, if we were going to be traveling somewhere, we're going to go to a new place, let's say a new country, you're going to leave. You say, well, do you just hop on the plane and go? No, we're talking about you're going to leave here and you're not coming back here. That kind of journey, not like a quick trip to Bali or something like that. We're talking about you're shifting continents. You're leaving behind your husband, your wife, your children, your job, your residence, your car, your bank balance, all of that staying here. And this is inevitable. It's going to happen, let's say, in a week. Do you wait until, let's say it's going to be next Sunday night, you're going to leave the Coolangatta airport? Do you just hang around till next Sunday and do nothing? Or are there many things that you would want to take care of and prepare? Let's say you're going to go to some place where you need to have inoculations for malaria and things like that. You don't know what it's going to be like. Isn't it intelligent that you would prepare? It's not negative. It's not like, why are you thinking about that? It's a very natural thing that each one of us would take care of. Yet, hardly any of us prepare for this journey called death. At this journey called death, we leave behind husband, wife, children, friend, parents, job, bank balance, everything, car, all of that is left behind. And it's a surprise journey. We don't even know where we're going to go. So the intelligent thing is if we do that just for a trip here in this world to prepare for it, to work out where we're going and how to tidy everything up, to make the journey as comfortable as possible, to get a passport and all the different things that we need, traveller's checks or whatever, so that our journey will be comfortable. And so similarly, this is what the Vedas and the Yoga wisdom says. Just prepare. This journey doesn't have to be a bummer. Spiritual life is not meant to be a bummer. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes how it is joyfully performed. Usually we think of spiritual life as something we put off until later after we're finished having fun. After we're finished enjoying life, having a good time, doing what we want to do, then, towards the end of life when I'm getting old and decrepit and I can't enjoy myself anymore, then I will think of spiritual life. But we're actually missing out. That journey itself is joyful. It is the highest joy. It is the highest happiness. So it isn't something to be put off. It is something to be embraced, to explore, and to have that journey now. And then, so we live a successful, positive, joyful life, a meaningful existence. And then when we have to take off at the airport, called death, then we know where we're going, we know what the journey is, and we travel wonderfully. So we'll be exploring different ideas like that next week. Is that okay? What do you think? Does anyone disagree with Yudhisthira Maharaj that it won't happen to you? Do you actually really consider that this is not going to happen? No, we all know it is, but like he says, foolishly, we put it off, thinking it is some time way off in the future. Long, 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 long way away. But who knows? Thank you very much.